Hello. Sorry that probably you found out now. The radio for section 3 covering the second sections of lecture 9 about panel data. Actually, the radios I upload doesn't come with sound because I stupidly turn off the radios when I recorded when I recorded that section. So let us do it again. Okay. So section 2, this is about panel data. Whenever in different diff, we actually talk about we need to observe the control and treatment groups at the pre-treatment periods and also post-treatment period. That is all already constitute, even for we only observe 4 data points, it already is constitute panel data. So because this original's 2x2 different diff, we have multiple unit. That is we in the original like the banking crisis example, we have the A and 6 districts. So one is the treatment group, one is the control group. That is, we have multiple units. And we also observe them over different periods, like pre-treatment in the 1930s and also post-treatment. And that already is the most simple structures of panel data. The panel data is referring to we actually observe multiple units over multiple periods. And this original 2x2 different diff can be easily extended in both the time dimension to covering, we observe both the treatment and control group for multiple periods. And also we can extend that to multiple treatment group, okay? We will introduce a new example to illustrate how this works. So there is a very important legislation debate in the US regarding what is the best drinking age for the young people. What's good actually for that, it is better to let the youngsters drink alcohol early so that they can develop a mature drinking habit. But another school actually thought it is better to keep them away from alcohol until later when they are less vulnerable towards mistake, particularly especially the case that your drinkings and driving that usually will lead to very lethal accident. And they also allow them, if you don't keep them away from the alcohol, and wait until they're older at the age that when they tend to be more capable of taking responsibilities for themselves. So, but there is this debate regarding what the real effects by setting either early age limits or late age limits on drinkings in the U.S. Since the end of prohibitions of drinkings in 1933. In fact, before that, the U.S. have a very interesting histories about alcohol prohibitions period. There's a lot of Hollywood movies regarding that period. Later on, actually, the legislators actually found that when you ban alcohol, it doesn't mean people no longer drink. It often means that there will be a smuggling markets that actually a black market for alcohols emerge due to prohibitions, because the demand is always there when you're trying to using legislation trying to set some legal red tape on that particular demands. It may kind of restrict the demand a little bit, but it never drain up the demands. the monks will always find its way, even that there's the illegal way. So in fact, due to these alcohol prohibitions, there is this black market. Along with the black market, you also have this gangster culture and other kind of crime that come with these prohibitions. So in 1953, they actually end this ban on alcohol. So after that, the United States, each of the 51 states in the US have gradually regulate access to alcohol. In fact, most of the states actually institutes a minimum legal drinking age. We can call it the MLDA of 21, because they want to set it at a later ages. It's actually later than in Hong Kong, right? I'm not sure whether there is a legal drinking age in Hong Kong, probably not that binding legal drinking age, but I think at least you have to be 18 to get the ID to buy some alcohols in the store, right? I think that's the case. So actually 21 is actually much older than, 3 years older than 18. So they actually set later ages for drinking, legal drinkings in the US. But there is some state in the US actually set this number still at 18, so just like in Hong Kong. But later on in 1971, following the 26 amendments of Constitution, which lowering the voting age to 18 in the US, many states also lowered the MLD age to 18 during the 1970s. Because one type of argument is that, well, if you are allowed to vote, that means you are an adult. If you are an adult, you should be able to responsible to taking responsibility, other responsibility like regulate your own behavior, behave yourself after drinkings, right? So some states actually lower this minimum legal drinking age to 80s during the 70s. But since 1984, the federal governments actually imposed, again, they try to hasten this age, drinking age to 21 to regulate the over-drinking problems in the US. In fact, if you know something about the social problem in the US, drinking and drugs are two of the main social problem in the US, even today. So the federal government actually trying to hasten the legal drinking age, but some states are not willing to comply to the federal government's legislation. So the National Minimum Drinking Age Act actually kind of prescribe a drinking age of 21 by withholding highway fund from state for those states choose not to comply. Meaning that if the state choose not to hasten their legal drinking age, the federal governments would kind of withhold some of the highway money, fiscal fund for that particular state as a punishment. So by 1988, all states in the US, including the District of Columbia, so in total there is 51 subnational units in the US, have raised the drinking age back to 21. So this is a very massive legislation histories of drinking age in the US. But in fact, we can also see it as an empirical question. As economists, we don't involve in the debate of a legal argument, but we can, by analyzing data, by applying econometric method, we can actually have some empirical evidence to support whether hiring or lowering the legal drinking age is better for the welfare of a youngster. Because we have this history, we have this massive legal histories that which actually provides the dispersion of the drinking age regulation across state and at different time periods of time. And they actually frequently change up and down. That's a perfect setting for different diff, right? Because we can take each of these legislation changes at state level as a policy shock that provides those stay actually change the legal drinking age could be our achievement group, and those stay at low age or high age can be the control groups, right? Then we can also have the pre and post, that a perfect setting for different to identify the effects of MLDA on the welfare. Okay. So in terms of the welfare to the youngster, the outcome variable, what kinds of measures should we adopt? Here, we will study the effects on death rate. Think about that, because the death rate, it is a very, the optimal forms of welfare, right? If you die, there's nothing else in terms of welfare that you can generate, no any more utility that you can actually generate if you die. So there can be optimal forms of measure of welfare. And compared to other welfare measure like income, like health, death rate is well measured. It's easy to measure. It's quite easy to tell whether you are die or not. Much easier than whether you are ill or not, right? And as I said, this is the most important outcomes of human life, though. So this is also the most worrisome outcomes if youngsters are allowed to drink at the younger ages, and if they cannot behave themselves, they engage in the drinking and driving that often lead to lethal consequences like accident that can cost life. And it's also correlated with non-fatal accidents as well. And apart from this advantage of using the death rate as a measure of welfare, we can actually use a different cause of death to serve as a robustness check, to check if our results make sense. Think about that. If alcohol should only affect some types of death, like if those deaths caused by the motor vehicles accidents, right? If you're drinking and driving, but it should not affect die by other causes, like the internal causes in terms of cancer and other chronic disease. That should have no effect. Although there is also evidence that alcohol should, if you're drinking alcohol constantly for a long time and in a great volume, it will cause your health as well. But that will be very slow. So it should not be that there should not be very direct correlation between drinking alcohols and die for chronic disease. So we can still see the later as a robustness check. We should expect, if this argument is causal, if this effects on legal drinking age on a death rate is causal, it should only affect those deaths by like the car accidents, but not the internal death. Okay, we can check that with data. So exactly how we will organize our data and set up analysis around the various and diverse change in this MLDA. Let's see. Think about, let's start with a 2x2 different diff. Think about there is 2 states in the US. One is the Alabama, another is Arkansas. Alabama actually lowered its drinking age from 21 to 19 in 1975. But the neighboring Arkansas state actually kept its legal drinking age at 21 throughout the whole observed period. So in fact, we actually collect data on the death rate of youngsters between 1970 to 1983, so that we can run this regression. So dependent variable the YST is the number of deaths per 100,000 residents aged between 18 and 21, aged between 18 and 20 in state S and year T. So the underscript ST, normally we write underscript of in the equation to corresponded to the unit of our observation, because now our unit is actually panel data. It observed multiple states. Here we have 2 states, right? Alabama and Arkansas. That's represented by this lowercase s, okay? And multiple year, so represented by this lowest case t, okay? So we write it as YST. And so for our diff and diff, we can set up 3 variable, just like before, using regression setting to run the diff and diff. One is the group dummy, the treatment, and it only varies and cross-sectional level. So that's a treat S. The S represents state. It will be 1 for Alabama and 0 for Arkansas throughout all this year that we observe the data. And pose is a variation at the time dimension, and it's 1 for years from 1976 onwards and 0 before. And policy on, it varies at both state and year level. It's actually the interaction term of these 2 dummy, or you can define as it's 1 if the observation is referring to Alabama after 1975, between 1975 to 1983, and other observation will be 0. Okay. Very simple and straightforward. If we run this regression, this is the result that we have. And see the different diff variable now is it's actually positive, meaning that it increased the death rate 7.07. But if we look at the T statistic, it's actually 1.05. It's not significant. By comparing only this Tuesday with one policy shock as diff and diff, it doesn't give us significant treatment effects of MLDA. So we can also look at the results graphically. Remember, we said it's actually worth to draw the graph of diff and diff. At least you compare the parallel time trends assumption. And even we look at the graph, the red line is Alabama, the blue line is Arkansas, the y-axis is a death rate per 100,000 young resident, and the x-axis is actually year. Okay, we can see overall, we can see that the death rate of youngster drop between the 2 countries, between the 2 states, but we didn't see a significant drop for Alabama's even, or increase for Alabama's even after 1975, after they lowering the MLDA. So, well, one possibility is that indeed, lowering the MLDA does not increase the death rate. There's no causal effect between the 2. But there is also can be some other explanation. Another explanation would be we actually have this type 2 error. We're actually making this type 2 error because we only compare 2 states. We have 2 small variation to compare. So in fact, we can add more state to make this estimation on the causal effects more accurate. Tennessee, a 3rd state, actually the MLDA for Tennessee actually fell from 21 to 18th in 1971, but increased again to 19th in 1979. So if we compare this free state, Alabama, Arkansas, and Tennessee, there is more than one treatment states now. Because both Alabama and Tennessee kind of change their MLDA at some point of the time, actually at different year. So they are both cheated. And Alabama's actually changed the law in 1975, but Tennessee changed it in 1971. And then again in 1979, there is no single post period anymore. And there is no single treatment anymore as well, because both are treatment group, but at different year. And also the drinking age now is not just like 21 versus 18 or 21 versus 19. We actually varies. It can be 21, it can be 18, it can be 19. It's more complicated cases. So we have to modify our regression equation a little bit, our specification a little bit to accommodate all this variability. So how is that? Here is our starting point, the original regression, the y as t is equals to, we have three variable treatment group, post dummy, and the policy on variable. Think of the policy on as an indicator for drinking age lower than 21. So we define any state at any year when the drinking age is actually lower than 21, then this policy on variable will be equal to 1, otherwise it would be 0. So this is a more general definition, right? It can accommodate a different drinking age at 19 and 18. So we can do that. But how about the treatment group variable and the post period variable? First, we replace the post dummy by free dummy variable. That's post 1971, post 1975, and post 1979 to capture all three different policy period, okay, among these free state. So by doing so, it should be able to accommodate the different treatment year. And how about the treatment group variable? We can also modify it a little bit. Now let's rename the treatment group variable as Alabama. In the original case, we actually have only two states, right? Alabama's and Arkansas. So only one variable is enough for two observations, for two units. That will be, we have a dummy variable called Alabama, and then we add Tennessee. We add a dummy variable is actually saying that this is the state of Tennessee, and if not, if that's the state of Alabama or Arkansas, then it will be 0. Okay, so if we add these two group variable, so our comparison group now is actually the Arkansas, right? So by doing so, we actually expand our treatment group dummy and also post-period dummy to accommodate more flexibilities. Finally, instead of just using a dummy variable for whether the drinking age is below 21, the policy on dummy, we can actually replace it by a continual variable measuring what the fraction of 18 to 21 years old is allowed to drink legally, call it legal. The new variables legal as T defined at both state and year level also allows us to deal with the mid-year change in the law. We define the legal as T as the fraction of the year and the fraction of 18 to 21 years old allowed to drink legally, okay? Now regression should look like this. So we don't have the policy on variable, it's replaced by this legal continual variables of legal. And we don't have the treatment group dummy, replaced by two dummy, the Alabama's and Tennessee's dummy, as opposed to Arkansas. And also we don't have the post-period dummy, we replace it by 3 different post-period dummy policy period. Okay, this is a more general form to accommodate all these variabilities in our new setting. So now, so which variable we are interested in? Again, it's deltas, right? Because we're actually using this legal variable to replace the Poisson dummy. So we care about this is actually our definitive variable, the delta. So let's look at the result. This is the result we have. Now, for the legal variable, so if the fractions of those youngsters who are allowed to drink, the fraction of month, when the youngsters are over the year, when the youngsters are legally allowed to drink, increase 1 unit, the death rate actually increased 15.12 unit. And more importantly, the T statistic is nearly 5. Now we have very significant result, meaning is that if you're lowering the MLDA, it will lead to more death among the youngsters, lead to some bad welfare outcome. But let's think bigger. Why restrain ourselves to only 3 states? In the US, we have 51 states, right? And we said some of the states actually changed the legal drinking age, just like Tennessee or Alabama. So in fact, we can add all the states. Now, instead of 3, we collect the data for all 51 states, both the death rate, when they actually legislate those youngsters under 21 are allowed to drink, the fraction of a month they are allowed to drink. And then, so we have to also expand those control, right? The group variable, the treatment group variable, and post-period variable. Now, because we have 21 states, we can actually add 50 dummy variable, the state KS, and the K referring to the number of states that we have, actually -1 that we have. We have 51, so the K is 1 to 50, right? So correspondingly, we have actually 50 beta, beta 1 to beta 50, okay? We can let out the Alabamas as our base group, but we can also choose to let out other state as the base group. It will be the same which of the subnational entity you actually choose to leave out. You have 51 entity, and then you add 50 dummy. That's enough. So which 50 you choose, and which the one you choose to let out, that will be all the same. Because after all, these are all the dummy variable, the control variables, right? What we care about is still the delta. So what do all the state dummy actually mean? Although we care about the delta, but what this beta actually measure, we have to understand that, although we don't care about the magnitude. So the original dummy variable, for example, Alaska, we can define it as 1 if the data observation is actually for Alaska. And if it's not, it's 0. So how should we interpret the dummy variable if we extend this definition to state KS? We have K state dummy variable in the regression, and it will be the state KS will be equal to 1 if the K dummy is equal to state S, and if it is not, it will be 0. So the K denote which one of the 50 dummies we are talking about. For example, the state Alabama or the state Arizona, extra. And S denote which state the particular observation actually come from. So it can be state K, Alaska, and state K, Arizona. So for state K, Arizona, for example, if the observation is indeed from Arizona, it will be 1, if otherwise it will be 0, okay? So to think about that, we can write it in a more general form, in a more parsimonious way. We write it as this sum. So in total, we have 51. If the K equal to Alaska, that's the first dummy variable, and up to Wyoming is the last in the alphabetical orders. And we have K beta corresponding to K dummy variable for the state. So suppose, for example, if you have a state actually coming from the observation as actually come from New York. So all this dummy variable for Alaska, Arizona, Wyoming, any state between will be 0. Only those state New York is 1, okay? And think about that. If the New York is 1, all the other will be 0. So that means that the Y is the death rate of New York is equal to alpha plus delta legal New York, the particular fraction for New York, plus beta New York, plus the residual. Actually, there's nothing inside here. What is left is residual. Oh no, sorry, we still have the year dummy we didn't mention. Inside this should be the year dummy. So we can do the same for the post dummies, right? Now instead of calculating all those years that actually there's one state change the policy. Think about that. We have 51 states, and we observed them between 1970 to 1983. Probably over these 40 years, every year you will have some state changing the law. Suppose you are. We now can expand this observation. Instead of controlling all the poles, we just control the year dummy. Like we have 1970s, the observation is between 1970s and 1983s, right? So we leave out the first year, 1970. So we have, in fact, we have all dummy variable between 1971 to 1983. So in total, we have 30 dummy variable corresponding to 30 gamma, the coefficient. So these year dummies are actually defined similar to the state dummies. So year JT equal to 1 if J equal to T, where J denotes dummy for year J, and T denotes that the observation actually coming from the year T, okay? So the same way we can define this year dummy as well. So let me answer your question. Does it make any difference for our estimate of delta if we include a set of dummies, the year dummies, which are 1 only for the one specific year, or we actually add the, just like before, we define the post variable, the post dummy, which is equal to 1 for every year that T actually larger or equal to J. Will that make any difference? Let me wait for 5 seconds. Do you have your answer in your mind? So the answer is actually no. It will be equal because by adding all the, we have 40 years, adding all the 30 dummies in the regression, we control any of the temporal changes in our observation. So in terms of the temporal variation, we observe all the degrees of freedom. So we should observe any common temporal shock in our data set. So that will be actually the same if you just define a bunch of poles, define all the poles and then add the dummy. So what does all this, so we can write our new regression in this very general form to include all the state dummy and year dummy. Just leave out the reference group, okay? So in this more general forms of, again, but our key regressor is still the legal. That's the state dummy and year dummy are the control variable to control the temporal levels variation and the cross-sectional variation that is not correlated with our treatment and death rate, but it not belongs to the causal effect. So the causal effect should still be absorbed by this legal variable. So we still care about delta. We just control this state and year dummy to control all those temporal cross-sectional omitted variable, okay? So in this specification, there's no particular treatment state anymore. Every state is a treatment state in a period when they change the law. When the state doesn't change the law, it becomes a control state. Some state, like cancer, which never change their law, are control states throughout the whole observed period. So the same for the time periods dummy as well, the year dummies as well. A period is a treatment period whenever there is a law changes, and it is not when there's no changes of law, but we don't care anymore because we only care when we control when we construct this legal variable. And in the state and year, we no longer need to distinguish whether a state is a treatment state or not, or whether the period is a treatment year or not. We just control all the state and year to absorb all to kind of use out all the degrees of freedom that we have at these two dimensions respectively. So this one is still should be considered as a definitive. So the mortality rate should be evolved in parallel in various states, except for the change of law. So we still, for this specification, we still require the death rates of over different states actually have the parallel trend in terms of the growth of mortality rate over time for this definitive estimation to work. So in R, to do that is actually pretty simple. We use this factor command to tell R. In the depth data set, you have a variable called state, right? It contains all either the state's ID or the state's name. We define it as a factor variable, and we assign new names to that. That's called, we generate a new variable in the data set called state.f. That's actually containing a new factor variables that is the same as state. Same for year. So we use this new factor variable to run the regression. When we put a factor variable in the regression, R will directly recognize is equal to tell R. Now I give you a factor variable. You change them into a bunch of exhausted dummies for me and put it in the regression. So that's exactly what they do. What the R will do, it will generate all the 50 dummy variable, and the 30 is the year dummy, and put it in the regression. The other part of the function are the same as before. So the variable we care about is still the state. We don't care about this dummy. This is just a control. Think about that we're referring to the death rate, the average death rates by each state, right? Or the average death rate at each year over different state. But we don't care about that. We only care about the coefficient delta for the legal variable. Now it's actually 10.5. The mortality rate will increase by 10.5 if the fraction increased by 1 unit. And the t-statistic is actually 19.1. It's very significant, meaning that we actually have lowering the MLDA actually significantly increase substantially the death rate among the youngster. So to sum up, the regression definitive allow us to instead extend the basic definitive idea to include multiple period and to multiple treatments and control group, and as they change their role over time, but we do not need a treatment variable or a post variable to accommodate them. The effects will all absorbed by the state dummy and the year dummy. And also, we can extend the form to accommodate those treatments that are not binary. Now we define as a fraction, so a fraction of months that the youngs are actually allowed to drink. So this is the second part. We introduce how to expand the definitive, the 2x2 definitive to a longer period and multiple treatment groups, more flexible forms of definitive using the panel data, setting. In fact, by controlling all this state dummy and year dummy, this is what we call, this was one form of estimation method specific to panel data that we call the fixed effect model, or fixed effect estimation. I will illustrate more about this fixed effects estimation in the next section. Thank you. Hope that I did record sound this time. I think I did. So thank you. Sorry for the mistake, and hope you enjoyed this video. And I will upload the lecture 10 this week. See you later.